Hello and welcome to the Device Files Commercialization Confidential with me, Blythe Karow of the Karow Advisory Group. Commercialization Confidential is a podcast focused on what it takes to really go from written commercialization plans to real world traction. And we're talking real stories, real challenges, and the top 5 takeaways you can actually use from CEOs and commercial leaders who have experienced launching medical devices, wearables, or digital therapeutics firsthand. Today, we are meeting Rolf Dixon. I'm very excited about this conversation. Rolf has a really amazing background. We'll have him walk through it in a second. He's Senior Commercial Director at GN Hearing. And let's just start by saying, welcome, Rolf.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, when we first met and I heard about your background, I was just really impressed. I think you've done a lot of really good work, and I think you've got a lot of great experience that we can use specifically around because you have done this more than once, but we're going to focus on one of the times that you've done this. So why don't you
Okay.
just start by giving us a little bit of your background?
So I work for a company called GN Hearing, like you mentioned before. So I have been with this company for about almost 20 years in all kinds of different types of functions and roles. So product management, product marketing, portfolio management, and then sales management and strategic accounts and global sort of like strategic affairs as well. So it's been a bit of a journey, but it's been across the whole value chain from full on to the executive level type of strategic planning part, and then really into the nitty gritty with customers and patients and rolling out and finding out how to actually get real commercialization done. So it's been great, and they've asked me to sort of not get into the details of the company and all that stuff. So I'll do this on my own personal interest and not represent the company.
Yeah, that's great. And we really appreciate you coming on and being able to share whatever you can share. You, um, let me just let you explain what you have done. Tell us a little bit about what the product lines are that they have and the exact case that we're going to be walking through, what details you can give us on the type of product and where you are commercializing.
Okay, sounds good. So the company that I work with is a large medtech device for hearing instruments or in the hearing industry care. And we have a large portfolio that we sell to lots of different types of channels. But we'd never done anything in the realm of working with patients that are really severely profound and had sort of like both cochlear implant on one ear and a hearing instrument on the other ear. So that's kind of what we wanted to enter into. That was a completely new ground that we were breaking. And so we wanted to test out and do that first and foremost in the US.
And is that a space where you were already calling on those hospitals or those clinicians, or was it a new pathway for you?
Very new pathway. We tried in many sort of shapes, sizes, and forms, but we'd never gotten access. And they were just weren't interested. We didn't have what they needed. So yeah, it was a completely new market entry.
So who were you targeting with this new product?
So it's the medical channels for us, and that's ENTs, hospital, university clinics, even large like reimbursement sort of channels like Kaiser Permanente, also for example, and then school systems too, actually.
Oh, interesting. When you say school systems, do you mean like university hospitals?
No, yeah, so that's kind of like one of the channels, but in the school system here are literally the school districts and the audiologists that are helping kids who have a hard time sort of learning in school to get them integrated into a learning program. Yeah.
Ah, that's very interesting. Okay,
hmm
nice. What year was this happening? Let's set the stage.
Yeah. So we decided to work together with this cochlear implant company and pilot, really figuring out would this even work? And that was back in 2015.
Okay.
And then we kind of started really the actual pilot in, you know, 2016 into 2017.
That is quite a theme we're getting. You have to pilot. You have to be testing these things out. You can't just go to a full launch.
Oh no, absolutely.
What what good things did you learn during your pilot?
So many. I think it was pivotal for us in getting into this area because we really wanted to find out what the market fit was, what type of customers, what type of reception it was. Had we done the right thing with the product? It was pivotal,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Were there any assumptions you had made going into it that just turned out to be totally wrong?
Yes, the decision making process of who gets to decide what kind of got turned upside down from what we had planned out to begin with. But I like to think that we really spent a lot of time being open, listening, and learning from these clinics, and figured out that how to do that better.
Yeah, I mean that's the point of the pilot, right?
Yeah,
You're going to do the best you can planning. And there's
absolutely,
going to be something that no matter how much you thought it through, no matter how much voice of customer you did beforehand, you're going to learn that something isn't how you foresaw. What
one hundred
did you
percent.
guys think? What were the gateholders and what ended up being sort of the real area you needed to focus to unlock those sales?
So we kind of went into with the premise of we needed to get into these clinics. We needed to talk to the clinic managers and talk to them about what we could offer them and all the benefits of what it is that we'd put together, right? But in reality, we discovered that they were quite dependent on whether or not the audiologist in the district for the schools would recommend them or not. So
Yeah.
we had to really figure out who those people were and what their needs were, how they work with these clinics, and then really get close to both parties through that collaboration.
Okay, that makes sense. Nice.
Mm,
So let's jump into our top 5. So you went ahead and gave me some top 5. I'm gonna see what we have here. Your first takeaway actually sounds like it might be a two-parter. You said build a strong team and don't take your SMEs, subject matter experts, for granted.
absolutely. I cannot emphasize enough how important it was to get the right people into this role. I mean, we got lucky with the first person that we hired. She was a rock star and had really good connections in within where we wanted to go.
Mhm.
So that bimodal sort of a patient, as well as the pediatric patient, the schools, the whole thing. But she was also great in being able to sort of manage stakeholders and actually close on the sales. So
Mm.
she was a bit of a unicorn, to be honest. And that's kind of like it's so important to get those types of good people in there. Absolutely.
We hear that a lot. I have 2 questions for that. One is, how do you identify you're hiring the right person? Because I will say when I was the CEO of a startup, I went into panic mode in HR because how are you supposed to know through a couple of interviews if this is the right person? And then the other
Absolutely.
question I have, and I can remind you of it when we get there again, but it when you decide to build out a commercialization team for a product launch, who are those first hires? What are the positions? How are you supporting the field in that?
That's a good question. So the hiring process was really, we had to scramble quite a bit to be able to get it. And I think that's probably one of the learning we also had of maybe change if we were to do it again,
Okay.
would definitely be to start that process earlier.
Mm,
When we needed the person, we started the process and we were way behind already at that point because
yeah.
getting that type of unicorn person was not easy. I mean, it's a hybrid between a clinician, an audiologist, a salesperson, someone who can, like a road warrior, because we had a lot of ground to cover as well.
Mm.
Lots and lots of aspects of it, right? And they needed to understand that field. So we we actually really had to like start from scratch basically. And my HR team did not have, you could say, the experience in hiring these types of people. We were lucky in getting that one person. So yeah, it was tough.
And you didn't go out and use, like, an external headhunter or anything?
We had to. I think we definitely did that a lot and got some good candidates, but I think we also got it through our network. So a lot of the existing teams that we had out in the field were really great at kind of coming back and recommending folks that they had worked with in clinics
Yeah.
that understood the like this niche area that we were trying to penetrate. They recommended us great people that we then interviewed and actually hired a few of them as well. Yeah.
That's an excellent point. I think a lot of times we think HR is just gonna go onto LinkedIn
Yeah.
and peruse some profiles, but
And
personal
and honestly,
recommendations are always better.
Yeah. And but HR does an amazing. I always feel like it's underestimated how much HR actually does in this
Yeah.
process. But it was just too niche and too unicorn-ish type of profile. It was so difficult to find one through the regular channels that the opening up and working with our actual accounts and customers really paid off in that sort of respect.
Nice. And so when you
Mhm.
were building out the shape of the team, that was your first hire. And
Mm.
in what was her role? Like, let's just start with title.
Yeah, so we kind of worked out an acronym, pediatric account manager, we called it,
Okay.
PAM. But in reality, the role was really sort of like it was a hybrid role between supporting the accounts, working together with the existing team because we had already teams that were working in other channels. So not going into conflict with other teams, so working very closely with the teams that were already in there, creating sort of like an infrastructure behind the scenes that could support the accounts because
Mm.
they were new types of accounts and we needed specialist sort of teams to be able to manage and support that. So building out that network and then being a like multi-stakeholder manager extraordinaire because you had to deal with so many different types of people in that to get access to those accounts. So yeah, really tricky.
So this is interesting. Your first major hire wasn't VP of sales.
Mm-mm.
You went more into the clinician access and understanding the flows and how really those offices work.
Yeah, it had to be like a peer-to-peer type of role.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cool. And then once you had her in place, then what else did you need to add in order to really build out that sales force?
Yeah, it was really important to get sort of um, I wouldn't say a specialist customer care person in there, but definitely someone to support offline
Mhm.
when she wasn't able to be in front of them, and they needed to understand that business. So that getting someone who understood that and had knowledge around that was also really important. And similarly, also really work closely with the product development, product management team, marketing team, and in general our back support team because when you set up this new type of business you need to have all the infrastructure in place.
Mhm.
You can't just rely on them doing it the same old way that they've done it for all the other customers, right? You had to figure out and identify what are their customers needs, like these specialist customers, and how do we service them right.
Yeah. And you said you partnered with a cochlear implant company. How did that partnership play out? Were they doing some of the sales? Were you supporting them? How did you
Yeah,
structure that part?
that's a great part too, like great question too. I mean, and that's actually goes back to the account manager as well because she needed to manage the relationship with them in the field too, and we had to
Mhm.
coordinate with their sales teams and their salespeople and their back office support teams to make sure that the customer, like the clinics, felt like it was a one-stop shop, right? We couldn't just we couldn't have them bounce between two companies. It was so important for us to make it so that it seemed like a seamless experience. So there was a lot of behind the scenes work done in making sure that that felt that way for the customers.
To the customer, was the product of your company or of the implant company?
It's a really interesting question. So the hearing instrument, that one that was bimodally enabled, was our product.
Mhm.
But it had to work seamlessly with the cochlear implant product too.
Yeah.
So in reality, and just to give a little bit of background here, these patients, whether or not they're adults or pediatric, like for an implant patient, 70 to 80% of them would need a hearing instrument on that other ear.
Mhm.
So they needed something that worked together with the implant. So we developed that concept, which is novel at the time. And we then had to make sure that all parties worked seamlessly together in order to make this an experience that was, well received for patients and the clinicians.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me about this before, so I'm gonna add a little bit of detail there. I think you had told me that they had used a hearing aid in the past, but they didn't sync. And
Yeah.
that is where the problem lay in they could hear it and they could hear it, but those things didn't work together. And what you were providing was the synchronization for the first time, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we were the first ones to offer a wireless streaming experience for these patients and the clinicians. That hadn't been done before between an implant company and a hearing instrument company. So all of a sudden, patients, and if you imagine someone who has a very, very profound hearing loss, and basically if they don't wear these devices, they can't hear anything. They're quite reliant on what they pick up through their devices. But
Mm.
through this streaming, they could now use their phones, all kinds of wireless accessories to augment that experience and get so much better listening to noise ratio out of those devices now.
Nice. And,
Mhm.
we kind of skimmed over this. So let's talk about it really quickly. You guys were in the market. I forget the year now already. What year was it that you hit the market? 2017, 2016 you were piloting?
Yeah, 2016 is kind of when we went live with the pilot. Yeah.
So we're now a decade later. When did
Mm.
you guys, how long after you started piloting did you feel like you were really starting to get traction? And what does the
That
market look like now a decade later? Is everybody using this kind of technology? How many competitors are out there? What's the landscape look like?
Yeah, so I can't probably go into too much
Okay.
details around that, but I can definitely. I mean, the pilot thing was faster than we expected.
That's
It
good.
was, yeah, it was very well received, and we grew it from like a small amount of accounts, like 10, 20, 30 types of size count, into triple that within a very short period of time. And the accounts were very like wide variety of big, medium, small sized. Some were had no experience of us, some were kind of indifferent to us, and others were not really keen to work with us. So it was really a wide gamut of accounts that we were trying to get input from, right? That kind of grew into quickly into like over the next 3, 4 years or so, it grew into a very significant part of both us and our partners' portfolio of accounts, right? So that was really great. And I would say if you look at it now, a decade later, that has been scaled out to the rest of the world, and we've had some of the competitors move into that space quite aggressively since then, have really sort of kept us on our toes in that space. So it's been good to see that that novel type of approach to addressing a market really paid off, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's been a major theme in medical device over the last decade in general is, I myself was working around that time at Boston Scientific trying to get connectivity into their spinal cord stim
Interesting.
product line. And there were a lot of different areas where incorporating connectivity was really
Hmm.
important and usually in a device that had some patient facing element, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so those of us who were working on it, like it was really groundbreaking back then, right? But everything is connected, like nowadays, by the way, I just got my new Aura ring.
Yeah.
You know, e everybody's connected to things. We're interacting all the time with devices in a way that just wasn't happening a decade ago, and so, of course,
Yeah.
the market has been evolving drastically.
Very fast, yeah. The adaptation of that when we came out with that wasn't fast, right? But it became a like a from not being a consequential sort of element in listening experiences for patients who have a hearing loss, it became kind of central for them
Mhm.
to be able to have that connectivity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Alright, let's see what else we got on the list here. We have already talked about takeaway number 2 a lot, so we're just gonna
Mhm.
mention it and move on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Takeaway number 2 is validate the business model through a clinical pilot, which we've basically been talking about this whole time. And it
yeah,
is very important. I mean, we're starting to see that theme a lot in the commercialization confidential. I think
yeah.
let's just drill down a little bit. Everybody, a lot of people are saying, you got to pilot, you got to pilot. What how do you design your pilot? How many sites did you try and support at one time? How did you decide that balance? Who was involved? How did you get the feedback so it would be useful? Give me some of
Mhm.
those details.
Yeah, absolutely. So with just one person, we kind of started out around 20 or 30 sites to begin with.
Wow. That's a lot of sites for one person.
That's what I meant. Like, I was not kidding that we jokingly, but very respectfully referred to these people as road warriors because they were out there pounding the pavement they were traveling a lot.
So that was your
So
Pam?
yes, the
Okay.
pediatric, yeah, exactly, Pam. But yeah, so that person, we kind of worked out. how much bandwidth that person would be able to encompass. Also, considering the fact that this was the entire US that they were covering. So a lot of ground. So we started out with 30 sites, and that kind of grew as we also onboarded a new person into, just shy of 100 or so. And
Mhm.
those sites kind of gave us a really good baseline of, um, like I mentioned before a little bit, the different sizes, the different needs that different sizes of clinics had. So if it's a multi-location site, if it was like a medium size or a small size, one size location type of sites, what they liked from us, if they kind of knew about us and was interested in working with us, whether or not they were indifferent or whether or not they actually didn't really want to work with us because they didn't have a good impression of us as a site.
Mhm.
So we really delved into and regularly sort of got feedback from their initial fitting with the patients to the follow-up visits to the second patient. So really went through the patients with them very, very closely to find out how they were experiencing and what they needed to get guidance around.
Wow. 30
A lot
sites
of
though, that
hand-holding.
just seems like such a huge amount to start with. So many people start a pilot with like 1 to 3
Yeah.
sites. The fact that you guys started with 30 to me sounds absolutely bonkers.
I think we had and this is maybe where the difference lies in like from a complete startup to a company that has infrastructure in place, right?
Yeah.
So the scaling of a pilot really is down to the fact that we have some of those things in place that can manage the interaction with accounts. It's the hand-holding part and the learning part and the getting the knowledge in and adapting the knowledge into your product and your market fit. That was the part that we really spent time on. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys went after a few different channels at the same
Yes.
time. And so you were, it was like you had the school systems, you had a few different things. And
Hmm.
so that way, I think a lot of times with a startup, you pick one and you try
Hmm.
that
Pick the
one and
right
then
one.
you move on. But you guys had the resources to do a little bit more than that.
No, no, actually, no. I think
Mhm.
you're spot on. It's a
Oh,
good point here. We started out focusing in on like the type of clinics that we knew we were going to be that was going to be instrumental in this.
oh,
But then the width of the pilot, we went through like several stages of the pilot that kind of grew in stages, and we expanded that channel footprint as we moved into and got more people on to be able to support it. So you're absolutely right. Actually, it
so that
wasn't just
first
like
30
it
was
wasn't like a no, it wasn't a shotgun approach at all. It was really targeted to begin with, but then but within that targeting, we kind of knew we wanted to address several types of customers within that type of channel. And then we expanded the channel footprint with the same premise.
wow. You're still blowing my mind with the 30 number. That you had quite a skilled team managing all of that. So, okay, third takeaway, be adaptable. Listen,
Yes.
challenge, protect quality. You're packing a lot in one takeaway.
Yeah, no, and yes, absolutely. I think that interaction that we had with those customers, we learned so much from their inputs, the first fitting experiences we had with them. We had some assumptions about what we knew we were going to be doing because the team, like I said, they were subject matter experts, right?
Mhm,
But getting the input from the clinics about how we needed to adapt to how they lived their lives with their patients was quite different sometimes from what we were used to. So we really need to adapt not just the infrastructure behind the scenes of how we supported them,
mhm,
but also sometimes really like how do we do the product differently? Like how do we some things you can't change, like the actual hardware, software stuff
mhm.
takes time, right?
Yeah,
And we can't just magically make that appear.
right.
But the ecosystem around it to make sure that the customers get what they needed to be able to really fit those patients in the best way possible, that we spent a lot of time sort of listening and learning from, adapting to. They challenged us, and we really took it to heart.
Yeah.
So it was really good, actually.
When you talk about listening, we use voice of customer throughout product development and once you're in the market. When you designed the pilot, did
Mm.
you set up very robust structures for gathering a voice of customer, or did you just, like, tell your PAM, "These are the things we're trying to learn about, make sure you get back to us and we'll check in every week." How did you structure that listening part?
That's a great question too. To begin with, we had kind of like a very structured server. Like we want to get this type of information, this type of information, this type of information. But the interaction that we learned, that was another adaptation sort of mode, was a little bit more fluid. So the account managers kind of came back with feedback that we hadn't planned for, either that wasn't captured in the normal process, but we needed to make sure we kind of fed into the system. So we had to adjust how we wanted to get feedback in the process of getting feedback.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just highlights again, you need a person who really pays attention
Oh
and
yeah,
can convey those things. And
absolutely.
and also like, basic questionnaire design. You always ask an open-ended question before you give them a structured one because you never know what people will tell you when you're
Yeah,
not
right.
guiding it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. What did you mean by protect quality?
Yeah, so we knew that this is a field within my industry that is almost sacred, and you don't get second chances with this space. So we needed to make sure that through this pilot that we really double, triple checked everything that we were doing with them so they didn't have a hard time. We wanted to make it as easy and as comfortable with them as possible.
Mm,
So product quality was one thing, making sure that it all worked, but also if there were things that they weren't being able to make work, we fixed it like straight away and really, really quickly.
yeah.
So the responsiveness was super important.
That's a good one. And you need, responsiveness in the field is one thing, but then you have to connect it to the back end and be able to run down the hall to the,
Oh yeah,
technical team really quickly and
absolutely.
say, "What is this? We did not anticipate this."
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they come up. I mean, you can best laid plans, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
can put out as much rail guards and all kinds of things you want to do, but things will morph into something that you didn't expect for sure.
Okay. So I think another takeaway that you had from this is the importance of champions. Can you walk me
Mm.
through what you mean by that, how you found them and how you nurtured them?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it keeps coming back to the pilot, right? But it is such a central element of it. But through the pilot, we really built some really strong relationship with some of these clinics who were very open and really enthusiastic about what it was we offered to them. So they kind of became some champions of ours. And I think you've talked about this before. Some of your other podcast guests have talked about this before too, right? That if you if you build a proper pilot, you really get them sort of engaged and involved in what it is you're doing.
Mhm.
And when they see what it is you're doing for them and their patients, they become enthusiastic and want to share the excitement about this with colleagues around the nation, right? So
Mhm.
we built a really strong champion and advocacy sort of like group based off of the pilot, and that gave us so much more access to a whole bunch of other accounts that we wouldn't have been able to if they didn't hadn't helped out.
Yeah. So I hear it a lot, like you said, get those champions, build those champions. I'm sure people are going, yeah, but how?
Yeah.
So how did you like find them and engage them?
So finding them is it's great if you have a contact within like a clinic and you kind of have a foot in the door, but that's not always the case, right? So sometimes you have to feel it out through, let's say you have a let's say you have 10 pilot sites, right? You have to feel out who's willing to go the distance with you, and then getting them really involved, like, and part of the process, and making them understand that they are now taking some pretty first and significant steps in the industry. So they are becoming a little bit of a like the first movers in an industry and taking these steps together with you and being onboarded with you. So
Mhm.
getting them involved and brought into the actual journey was really key to all of this.
Yeah.
And I think then the product kind of helped out a little bit in itself.
So your PAM, were they finding and identifying these champions?
Yes, absolutely. They were I mean, I can't speak highly enough for what they did out there in garnering all the recognition and
Yeah.
respect from our accounts to this and onboarding these types of champions. Yeah,
Well, if GN is listening, I don't know who this PAM is, but they probably deserve a bigger bonus.
absolutely.
Okay. And the last one was I'm going to read it here, secure long term financial commitment earlier than you
Mm.
think you need it. That's an interesting one. Haven't heard
Yeah,
that.
it's
And what do we mean by that?
yeah, I mentioned a little bit earlier about the fact that the pilot was progressing so well,
Mhm.
and the sites were taking this on so well that we had to expand quicker than we actually anticipated. So getting the resources to be able to do that was not planned. Like, I mean,
Ugh.
and so it was a bit. It was actually became a little bit of a like a little bit of a tough spot for us because we needed to grow, and I think you know this too, right? I mean, if you get to a certain point with your customers and your accounts and you are able to grow, you can't just hold back. You've got to roll with it to be able to keep the momentum.
Mhm.
And that was what we needed to do. So that became a little bit challenging. And even though this is a corporate setting, I mean, resources are earmarked. They can't just be switched around at the flip of a switch. And similar to if you're a startup or scale up, you need to go out and get that money from, investors. And that's not just something you can just snap your fingers and do.
Yeah.
So that kind of caught us a little bit. So that would probably have been one of my areas too that I would have done a little bit more thoroughly to make sure that build a continuity around that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens a lot in the world of startups. You have to raise on the last example you set, and nobody's going to give you 5
Right.
years worth of runway generally, so you
Right.
have to keep feeding the beast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to our lightning round really quickly here.
Mhm.
So, what is one thing you would always recommend to do again?
I think that pilot is it's almost I've mentioned it throughout what we've talked about, right? It's the key thing I feel like,
Yeah,
that was the one that, I would do over and over and over and over again. Absolutely.
of course. Low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
The next one's harder. What is something you did that you would never do again?
I would probably I'd be very mindful next time to be more focused around getting that like, shortlisting who those subject matter experts would be that I would like to onboard, and then start the process earlier. That one caught us a little bit by surprise, and I wish we'd gotten someone to expand the team quicker, definitely.
What's your favorite KPI?
I really liked I really liked one where we talked about wanting to, get access to new clinics, and it opened up so many opportunities for learning from them, from finding out what their first patient fit was going to be like, get that feedback, hearing what they liked about the product, what they didn't like about the product. So getting access to those new points of sales and new clinics was actually really my favorite KPI. But honestly, just also getting feedback from the patients around the experience was also, it's not a hard KPI, but that was really a valuable one too.
Yeah, well, we all love that in medical device, right?
Yeah,
When
right.
we see that we're actually making an impact.
Yeah. A difference to people's lives. Yeah.
And so last one, what was the best sort of unexpected growth lever that when you went into it, you weren't planning on it at all?
I would definitely say the school system that
Mm.
we had not anticipated at all. And it opened up a whole new way of thinking about it and working within this industry. And it really made a massive difference in how we interacted with our regular accounts and what we learned as well. So that was really interesting. Really good one. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, Rolf, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I think this was an excellent story. I know the world of connected devices has changed in the last decade, but it's
Oh
still
yeah.
a very good example of what it really takes to get going in a new market. And I think walking us through everything that you guys encountered with your piloting was a really good example. So, thank you again.
My
And
pleasure.
everybody who's watching, this has been the Device Files Commercialization Confidential, which is part of my Substack. You were bleh, where I dive deeper into medical device and wearable commercialization strategy. You can subscribe at my name, blythekarow.substack.com, for more stories and analysis. And so I'm Blythe Karow. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next episode. Said Blythe Karow a lot. All right, Rolf, that was it. Excellent job.
Okay.
Thank you so much.